Hello and welcome, dear students. The title of today's lecture is Hydrological Cycle. One of the Earth's most vital natural resources, water, is essential for ecosystems, human civilizations and life. It exists on Earth in solid, liquid and gaseous forms and is constantly flowing through different parts of the Earth. Evaporation forms oceans and land surfaces, formation of clouds, precipitation of rain or snow, surface runoff and slow movement of groundwater beneath the surface represents the dynamic nature of the water. The storage and passage of water is explained by hydrological cycle, sometimes known as the water cycle. In addition to maintaining the availability of the fresh water and influencing weather and climate, the hydrological cycle is in continuous process. It unites the hydrosphere, lithosphere, biosphere and atmosphere into a cohesive system. This module is devoted to the study of continuous circulation and distribution of water within the Earth's atmospheric system. So far as the nature and significance of the hydrological cycle is concerned, one of the most important natural processes controlling the availability, distribution and flow of water on Earth is the hydrological cycle. It functions as a controlling mechanism that keeps the supply and demand of water in various areas and ecosystems in balance. The hydrological cycle guarantees the replenishment, distribution and accessibility of fresh water for both natural systems and the human societies. The multiple roles played by hydrological cycle in climate regulation, ecosystems and human activities. One of the primary functions of the hydrological cycle is its role in climate regulations. By transferring water and energy between the Earth's surface and the atmosphere, the cycle influences temperature patterns, humidity levels, cloud formation and precipitation. Evaporation removes heat from the Earth's surface, while condensation releases latent heat into the atmosphere, thereby driving atmospheric circulation and weather systems. In this way, the hydrological cycle is crucial for maintaining the overall energy balance of our planet. The hydrological cycle is vital for functioning of the ecosystems. Regular and consistent water availability is essential for planet growth, nutrient cycles, biological productivity. Rivers maintain freshwater habitats, wetlands control water flow and quality, soil moisture supports vegetation, and groundwater offers a stable supply of water during dry spells. Ecosystem resilience, biodiversity, and health are all directly affected by changes in the hydrological cycle. From a human perspective, the significance of the water cycle is evident in its support of industry, agriculture, and domestic water supply. Agricultural systems rely on precipitation, soil moisture, and irrigation water derived from surface groundwater sources. Industrial processes depend on water for cooling, processing, and energy generation, while urban population depend on the water for drinking, sanitation, and waste disposal. Any alteration in the natural functioning of the cycle can therefore have direct economic and social consequences. The extreme variations in the hydrological cycle are related to the occurrence of floods, droughts, landslides, and water scarcity. Excessive precipitation and rapid runoff can lead to flooding, while prolonged defects in precipitation can result in drought conditions. Understanding the hydrological cycle helps in predicting such events and in developing strategies for disaster risk reduction. Another important characteristics of the hydrological cycle is its role in water quality maintenance. Water interacts with soils, rocks, vegetation, and man-made structures as it passes through various components. These interactions influence the chemical, biological properties of water. Natural filtration through soil aquifers can improve water quality. Pollutions introduced at any stage can degrade both surface as well as the groundwater. Thus, the hydrological cycle serves as both a carrier and a regulator of water quality. In the last few decades, the significance of hydrological cycle has increased due to growing human pressures and climate change. Population growth, land use change, urbanization and deforestation, and large-scale water extraction have modified natural flow paths and storage. The frequency of extreme events has been greatly affected by climate change. These changes have intensified water-related challenges, making a comprehensive understanding of the hydrological cycle more important than ever. The dynamic nature of water is unique among natural substances in that it occurs naturally in all three states, solid, liquid and gaseous, and continuously transforms from one state to another. This ability under natural temperature and pressure conditions makes water a highly dynamic component and a central element of the water cycle. In liquid state, water is found in seas, oceans, rivers, lakes, wetlands, reservoirs and beneath as groundwater. Liquid water is the most visible and actively used form of water. It supports agriculture, ecosystems, industry and human consumption. It plays an important role in surface runoff, river flow, groundwater recharge and erosion processes. In solid state, water exists as ice and snow in glaciers, ice caps, snowfields and frozen soils. These collectively constitute the cryosphere, which acts as a long-term storage component of hydrological cycle. Large volumes of fresh water are locked there for periods, often spanning hundreds to thousands of years. Seasonal accumulation and melting of snow and ice strongly influence river discharge patterns, particularly in mountainous and high latitude regions. In its gaseous state, water exists as water vapor in the atmosphere. Although it represents only a very small fraction of total water, it plays an important role in weather and climate related processes. It constantly added to the atmosphere by transpiration, from plants to evaporation, from land surface and aquatic bodies. Water is a dynamic as well in terms of its movement and storage. It flows rapidly through the atmosphere and subsurface water systems, while it moves quite slowly through soil and groundwater systems. Some water molecules may complete a cycle from ocean to atmosphere to land and back to the ocean within days or weeks, while others may remain stored for thousands of years. This wide range of movement rates and storage duration adds to the complexity of the hydrological cycle. So far as global distribution of water is concerned, although water appears abundant on Earth, its distribution is highly uneven. The ocean stores over 97% of all water as saline water. Only about 3% is freshwater. Of this freshwater, nearly 69% is locked in the glaciers and ice caps. About 30% exists as groundwater. Less than 1% is available as surface water in rivers, lakes and wetlands. This unequal distribution demonstrates why hydrological cycle is essential for redistributing fresh water for easy accessibility for human usage. So far as the global hydrological cycle is concerned, the uneven allocation of water is not static but is continuously modified by hydrological cycle. The global hydrological cycle governs the movement of water between these reservoirs and ensures the redistribution of fresh water. The hydrological cycle can best be understood by beginning with the oceans, which acts as largest reservoir of water. Solar radiation heats the ocean surface, causing water to evaporate and enter the atmosphere as vapors. The vapors rise, cool and condense to form clouds. While a significant portion of the condensed moisture precipitation back into the oceans, some are transported over land by winds. The precipitation over land enters water into the terrestrial system as rain, snowfall, hail, sleet, or drizzle. Complexity and continuity of the hydrological cycle. The hydrological cycle is far more complex than a simple circular movement of the water. It consists of numerous pathways with varying speeds and durations. The cycle is continuous and unending. It never stops or restarts. Instead, water is constantly recycled through different reservoirs and processes. This continuity ensures long-term accessibility of water. The distribution in one aspect of the cycle can affect the entire system. It can influence water availability, vulnerability to pollutions, and system response to climate and human-induced changes. So far as the cycle's components are concerned, the hydrological cycle comprises in a set of interconnected processes and reservoirs through which water is continuously circulated, stored, and redistributed. For clear understanding, these components are broadly classified into transportational, that is the flow component, which involves the movement of water, and storage components, which represents location where water is temporarily retained. And the flow components, the transportational components represent the pathway through which water passes from one reservoir to another within the cycle. They operate at different spatial and temporal scales and collectively maintains the continuity of the cycle. The major transportational components include evaporation, transpiration, evapotranspiration, precipitation, surface runoff, stream flow, interflow, and through flow, groundwater flow. Each of these processes play a distinct role in transferring water between the atmosphere, land, and land surfaces, subsurface, and oceans. So far as the storage components are concerned, which represent the reservoirs where water is temporarily held within the systems. The duration of the storage varies among different components, ranging from a few days to thousands of years. The major storage components include atmospheric moisture, oceans, lakes, rivers, and their reservoirs. Soil moisture, groundwater, aquifers, glaciers, and snow fields, biological storage in vegetation. Together, these storage components regulate water availability, sustain river flow, and buffer hydrological systems against short-term climate variability. So far as the cryosphere and long-term water storage is concerned, among these, the storage components, the cryosphere is a significant long-term reservoirs of the fresh water. It includes glaciers, snowfields, ice caps, and seasonal snow cover. In cold and high altitude regions, a substantial portion of precipitation is stored as snow and ice, rather than immediately controlling to runoff. Seasonal accumulation and melting of snow and ice regulate the timing and magnitude of the river flows. Meltwater provides a sustained source of water during warmer months. In India, Himalayan glaciers and snowfields play an important role in sustaining river systems like the Indus and Ganges and Brahmaputra. Meltwater supports downstreams water availability, agriculture, and ecosystem, making the cryosphere a vital component of the regional hydrology. So far as the residence time of the water is concerned, the average amount of water that water stays in a specific reservoir is known as a residence time. Residence time varies widely among different components. whereas water in rivers can stay for weeks. Atmospheric water only stays for a few days. So in contrast to the groundwater and glacial, ice may have residence time ranging from hundreds to thousands of years. To understand the residence time, it is essential for assessing water sustainability, predicting system responses to climate and human-induced changes, and evaluating the persistence of pollutants. Longer residence time generally implies slower response and prolonged impacts of contamination, while as shorter residence time indicate rapid turnover and dynamic variability. So far as energy bases of the hydrological systems are concerned, the role of solar radiations comes into existence. The hydrological cycle is fundamentally driven by energy, with solar radiation acting as its primary source. Solar energy provides the heat required for evaporation, and evapotranspiration initiates atmospheric circulation and influences cloud formation and precipitation processes. By heating the Earth's surface unevenly, solar radiation generates pressure gradients that driven winds and transport atmospheric moisture across oceans and continents. The continuous flow of water through various hydrological system components is maintained by the energy input. Minor energy contributes also arise from geothermal heat and human activities. However, these are insignificant compared to the dominant role of the sun. So far as the evaporation and evapotranspiration is concerned, evaporation and evapotranspiration constitutes the primary pathways through which water is transferred from the Earth's surface to the atmosphere. These processes form a critical link between the land surface vegetation and the atmosphere. The physical process that turns liquid water into water vapor and releases it into the atmosphere is called evaporation. It comes from moist soil surface and open water bodies. Evaporation is primarily a source or the solar energy driven processes. The rate of evaporation varies widely across regions and seasons and is controlled by several environmental factors. Higher temperature provide greater energy for the conversion of the water into the water vapor. Wind removes saturated air and replaces it with the drier air, thereby enhancing evaporation. Atmospheric humidity influences evaporation by determining the vapor pressure gradient between the water surface and the surrounding air. Additionally, the surface area of the water body and the availability of the exposed moisture affect evaporation rates. So far as transpiration is concerned, the biological processes by which plants emit water vapor into the atmosphere is called transpiration. Water absorbed by plant roots is transported upward to the plant tissues and eventually lost to the atmosphere through leaf stomata. Transpiration is closely linked to the plant growth, photosynthesis and physiological functioning. The rate of transpiration depends on plant type, vegetation, density, soil moisture, availability of temperature, solar radiation and the atmospheric conditions. Dense vegetation cover generally increases transpiration rates, while water stressed plants reduce transpiration by closing the stomata. Through transpiration, vegetation acts as an active regulator of water transfer between the soil and the atmosphere. Evapotranspiration, that is the total amount of water lost to the atmosphere by transpiration from plants and evaporation from the surface. It is an important part of the terrestrial water balance and the primary route of water loss from the land regions. Evapotranspiration strongly influences soil moisture conditions, groundwater recharge, river flow and local climate. High evapotranspiration reduces the quantity of the water available for runoff and recharge, while low evapotranspiration allows greater water retention within the land system. Seasonal variations in the evapotranspiration are particularly important in monsoon-dominated regions where water availability fluctuates sharply between the rainy and the dry periods. So far as the precipitation is the mechanism through which atmospheric moisture is returned to the Earth's surface, completing the upward-downward exchange of the water within the hydrological system. It represents the principal input fresh water to terrestrial and marine systems. Atmospheric water condenses into liquid water droplets or the ice crystals and fall under the force of gravity. This transformation is primarily triggered by the cooling of moist air, which reduces its capacity to hold water vapor. So far as the forms of precipitation are concerned, precipitation may occur in several forms depending on the atmospheric temperature and physical conditions, like we have rain, liquid water, droplets. The most common form is tropical and temperate climates, snow, which is the ice crystals formed when temperatures are below freezing, hail, solid ice pellets formed in strong convective storms, sleet, frozen or partially frozen raindrops, drizzle, very fine droplets, dew and fog depositions, minor forms of moisture inputs under specific conditions. So far as the partitioning of the precipitation on land is concerned, once the precipitation reaches the land surface, it does not follow a single uniform path. Instead, it partitions into several components, each contributing differently to surface water, like soil moisture, groundwater recharge, and atmospheric return. This partitioning process is a critical control on water availability, river flow, groundwater levels, and the occurrence of the hydrological extremes, like we have the floods and droughts. A portion of precipitation may fall directly into the rivers, lakes, wetlands, and reservoirs, where it becomes immediately available as surface water and is rapidly routed through river system. Another portion of precipitation is intercepted by vegetation, buildings, and other surface features. Intercepted water may be evaporated directly back into the atmosphere or reach the ground gradually as throughfall and stream flow, thereby delaying its entry into the soil and runoff system. Water that reaches ground surface may follow several pathways. A significant fraction returns to the atmosphere via evaporation from the soil and the transpiration from the vegetation collectively contributes to the evapotranspiration losses. The remaining water infiltrates into the soil, replenishing the soil moisture storage and supporting the plant growth. When rainfall intensity surpasses the infiltration capacity of the soil, or when the soil is already saturated, or excess water flows downslope as surface runoff, this runoff collects in small channels and streams, contributing to the river flow and under extreme conditions to the flooding. A portion of infiltrated water moves deeper into the subsurface, contributing to the groundwater recharge. So the relative proportion of the interception, infiltration, runoff, evapotranspiration, and recharge depends on the rainfall characteristics, soil properties, vegetation cover, land use, and topography. Thus, the partitioning of the precipitation governs the overall hydrological response of a landscape. So far as the surface runoff, channels, storage, and stream flow is concerned, water that does not infiltrate into the soil flows over the land surface and surface runoff. This runoff converges into the network of rills, gullies, streams, and rivers, forming an organized drainage system. Once water enters a defined stream channel, it becomes a stream flow, which represents the principal mechanism for transporting fresh water across land. Rivers transport water, sediments, and dissolved materials towards larger river systems and ultimately back to the ocean. Channel storage within river systems temporarily holds water and regulates the timing and magnitude of stream flow. This storage plays a vital role in moderating flood peaks, sustaining flow during dry periods, and shaping river morphology. So far as infiltration, percolation and groundwater movement is concerned, this process of water penetrating the soil surface is known as infiltration. Its rate and extent depends on soil texture, soil structure, soil moisture content, vegetation cover and land management practices. Infiltrated water temporarily increases soil moisture storage, which is necessary for plant growth and evapotranspiration. Percolation is the downward movement of infiltrated water from the soil zone to deeper layers of the subsurface. Through percolation, water reaches the saturated zone and replenishes groundwater. Groundwater moves slowly through pores and fractures in soil and rock formations under the influence of hydraulic gradients. Although the flow is much slower, it plays an important role in sustaining rivers, wetlands and springs through base flow, particularly during dry seasons. So in this way, groundwater acts as a natural buffer against short-term variability in precipitation. So dear students, this was all about today's lecture. Hope you have enjoyed it well. Thank you for watching.